It's August 14th, 2 in the afternoon on a Thursday here in Korea. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Hyun-kyung. And these are the stories we're following this afternoon. Now, Pope Francis lands and starts his 5-day visit in Korea. President Park Geun-hye personally welcomes the pontiff at the airport and is scheduled to sit down with him this afternoon at the presidential office. The Bank of Korea cuts the nation's key interest rate by 25 basis points, a move that was widely expected and in line with the government's expansionary policy. North Korea breaks its silence, but not in response to Seoul's offer of high-level talks. Pyongyang calls on South Korea to cancel its annual military exercise with the U.S. Now we begin, of course, with the start of Pope Francis' 5-day visit to Korea. It's his first trip to Asia since he was elected last year. He arrived in Seoul this Thursday morning and was welcomed in person by President Park Geun-hye. Now let's turn to our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun for more details. You-sun.
Hyun-kyung, Pope Francis landed at the Seoul Airport, which is just south of Seoul, at 10:15 a.m. earlier today, after which he was greeted by President Park, officials and representatives from the Korean Catholic Church. Upon meeting the Pope, the president said that she hoped Koreans would be warmly consoled by the Pope's visit and that it would start an era of peace and reconciliation on the divided Korean peninsula. The Pope, in response, said he carried peace in his heart on his way here. 32 Catholics were invited to greet the Pope, and including the families of the victims of April's deadly ferry disaster, to whom the Pope said he shared in their heartache and thinks of the victims. After a private mass at the Vatican Embassy in Seoul, where he'll be staying throughout his visit, the pontiff will make a courtesy call to President Park later this afternoon and speak in front of Korean government officials. One thing to keep an eye on today is what the Pope and the president will discuss and the message they will convey following their talks, especially in regards to the inter-Korean relations as well as historical differences that have caused tensions here in Northeast Asia. Hyun-kyung?
Well, the Pope does have a jam-packed schedule. Tell us more about what we can expect in the coming days.
Well, on the papal itinerary for the rest of the week are officiating a mass to celebrate the Assumption of the Virgin Mary on Friday in the central Daejeon area, and beatifying 124 Korean martyrs in downtown Seoul on Saturday. And there will be 2 other masses, one on Sunday to mark the closing of the 6th Asian Youth Day, and another one on Monday on peace and reconciliation here in Seoul at the Myeongdong Cathedral. Pope Francis, who had specifically prayed for peace and reconciliation on the divided Korean peninsula during his first Easter Mass last year, is expected to deliver some sort of a message on easing tensions between the two Koreas during Monday's Mass. Seoul earlier this week proposed inter-Korean talks to seek improving ties, an offer Pyongyang has yet to respond to. It's also speculated that the Pope will meet with Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery during his trip. With President Park due to speak on Friday to mark Korea's liberation from Japan's colonial rule, it will be interesting to see what message the president makes concerning Japan's repeated denials of past atrocities and ways to improve bilateral ties. This was Choi You-sun reporting on Pope Francis' visit to Korea this week, and I'll bring you more details on our next newscast.
All right, thank you, You-sun. Now, one group that is anxiously hoping the Pope will lend a helping hand during his visit is the bereaved families of April's ferry sinking that left more than 300, mostly teenagers, dead. Our reporter Yoo Ri-an says the families are tired of waiting on lawmakers to pass a special bill.
Under dark clouds and spitting rain at a plaza outside of Seoul City Hall, families of the victims of the Seoul ferry disaster say they hope the pontiff helps them get the answers they so desperately want.
We want to talk to the Pope, who wants to be with the families of the victims of the Seoul ferry disaster. We want to know the truth behind the disaster.
The families have been waiting on the National Assembly to pass a special law that would allow for a more transparent investigation into the accident, although rival parties remain deadlocked over key details of the bill. The families contend the lawmakers simply have no political will to uncover the truth.
We are ready to die for this. We will not leave until the special 세월호 bill is passed.
The Pope is expected to meet with family members of ferry accident victims as well as surviving students on Sunday on the sidelines of the closing mass for Asian Youth Day in Daejeon, some 140 kilometers south of Seoul.
It will be of great strength to us if the Pope continues to take an interest in this issue and talks about how the government has been slow to get to the truth.
The families of the Seoul victims have gone on hunger strikes and embarked on days-long marches to the National Assembly, demanding passage of the special Seoul bill. 유리안, ARIRANG News.
Now, the Korean Catholic Church has a history that dates back more than 200 years, but none of it would have been possible without the sacrifices of a great many martyrs. Saturday's beatification ceremony in downtown Seoul will surely be one of the highlights of the Pope's visit. Our Lee Ji-yeon went to a site in the southwestern city of Cheonju where those sacrifices all began.
Cheondong Catholic Church, sitting in a labyrinth of traditional Korean structures, is built on the grounds where Korea's first Catholic martyr, Po Yoon-ji-chung, lost his life.
I always remember this place as having strong historical roots, and as I attend Mass, I try to continue on that spirit of sacrifice.
This 83-year-old church was literally built on a foundation of blood. Cheondong Church's cornerstones come from the old palace ruins where Martyr Yoon was killed.
These stones are from the site where there was great bloodshed of so many martyrs. They were pulled apart to death, and the stones from the 1791 and 1801 persecutions lie from here to all the way over there.
Korea's early believers in the 18th and 19th century during the Joseon dynasty had to fight against the ruling class and deeply rooted teachings of Confucianism. This included giving up ancestral rituals and embracing equality across all social classes, widely seen as a challenge to the existing social hierarchy. Until religious freedom was granted in 1887 in the country, thousands fled persecution but lost their lives. And of them, 124 will be beatified during Pope Francis's visit, including Korea's first martyr, Yoon. But not many visiting Cheondong Church are aware of the significance the place holds. They're mostly tourists who come to admire the Romanesque architectural masterpiece with beautiful domes and simple but commanding lines. They are also mostly unaware of the irony of the church's location, which makes it all the more meaningful, because it sits right across Gyeonggi-jeon, a landmark where the portrait of the Joseon dynasty founder is enshrined.
The royals, such as King Jeongjo, who persecuted Catholics, are remembered there. But we built our grounds here with the belief that making peace as we sit side by side is most important.
And that idea of peace and reconciliation is a powerful message that extends beyond the boundaries of this religious landmark. Lee Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. North Korea still has not given an answer to South Korea's offer of dialogue. Instead, the regime has upped its threats, calling on Seoul to cancel an upcoming joint military exercise with Washington and to lift sanctions on Pyongyang. Our Foreign Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Without giving a response to South Korea's recent proposal for talks, North Korea on Thursday laid out specific measures Seoul should take to improve inter-Korean ties. In a statement on Thursday, the North's agency in charge of inter-Korean relations called on the South to cancel the Ulji Freedom Guardian military exercise with the United States. warning that a failure to do so would push the Korean peninsula to the brink of war. The annual military drills, which Pyongyang calls practice for an invasion, is scheduled to begin August 18th. The Committee for Peaceful Reunification of Korea urged the South to remove what they said were unreasonable institutional mechanisms blocking the contact, visits, cooperation, and exchange between the North and the South, a reference to a set of sanctions imposed on Pyongyang following the sinking of the South Korean warship Cheonan in 2010. The statement comes just days after South Korea proposed high-level talks next Tuesday to discuss a range of pending issues, including a possible round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Although the North remains tight-lipped on the offer, it did note the South Korean government should demonstrate its desire for improved ties through practical actions rather than in words. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
And North Korea might be putting its words into action. Pyongyang reportedly fired 3 short-range projectiles into the East Sea on this Thursday morning. The Joint Chiefs of Staff of South Korea and the U.S. say North Korea fired 3 300mm rockets shortly before the Pope's arrival between 9:30 and 10 a.m. It's the 17th time that the regime has test-fired projectiles this year, and the 6th time it has shot off this type of artillery rocket. Military sources say the North appears to be testing their missile range and added that they are closely monitoring the situation for any further provocations. And South Korean authorities are currently investigating 2 North Koreans who swam across the West Sea border seeking to defect to South Korea. Government sources say the 2 men, one in his 50s and the other in his 20s, were spotted at around 4 a.m. Korea time swimming toward Gyeongdo Island, which is about 2.5 kilometers away from the nation's or the North's closest western coast. The 2 have reportedly expressed their desire to defect to the South. South Korea has seen a series of similar cases in the western border regions in recent years. The most recent came last month when a North Korean man arrived in a wooden boat on Pyeongdo Island. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has clarified America's Asia-Pacific strategy. He says it does not and will not take sides in any of the maritime conflicts that have gripped the regions in recent years. Connie Lee reports.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry made it clear that improving U.S. cooperation with China was important to maintain stability in the Asia-Pacific region. Speaking on Asia policy at the East-West Center in Honolulu on Wednesday, Kerry also mentioned that the U.S. does not take positions on the territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas. In light of the sovereignty questions, he stated that the U.S. firmly opposes the use of intimidation or force to assert a claim. Kerry reiterated instead that all parties must work together to solve the claims through peaceful means. He continued to say that these principles bind all nations equally, and all nations have a responsibility to uphold them. Kerry also strongly emphasized that the U.S. will continue to work toward promoting human rights and democracy in Asia. He specifically mentioned that the concentration camps in North Korea should be shut down immediately.
Such deprivation of human dignity just has no place in the 21st century. North Korea's gulag should be shut down, not tomorrow, not next week, but now.
He added that Pyongyang's proliferation activities pose a serious threat to the United States and to the world. Kerry's speech in Honolulu wrapped up an 8-day around-the-world diplomatic tour, which included the ASEAN and East Asia summit meetings. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And ahead of Korea's Liberation Day, which is tomorrow, Kerry also sent a congratulatory message to mark the occasion. The message came on behalf of U.S. President Barack Obama and the American people, congratulating Korea on its liberation from Japanese colonial rule. In the statement, Kerry said he looked forward to forging ever stronger relations with Korea to continue to promote peace and stability around the world. He added, Korea-U.S. cooperation extends from the political, military, and economic spheres to the many people-to-people ties that underpin the bilateral relationship. Another 5-day ceasefire has been agreed upon in Gaza, but minutes before the Palestinian factions agreed to the extension, Israeli forces reported fresh rocket fire. They say at least 5 were shot in their direction. There were no reports of casualties, and Hamas denied any responsibility. Now, Israeli Defense Forces responded by targeting what it called terror sites in Gaza. It's still unclear what impact, if any, the streak of attacks will have on the 5-day truce extension. All sides have been locked in indirect negotiations to produce a more lasting peace deal. Palestinians reported significant progress, though differences remained on the details of security arrangements and reconstruction efforts. The World Health Organization has designated Kenya as a high-risk county or country, rather, for the spread of Ebola. Located in eastern Africa, Kenya is a major transport hub with more than 70 flights per week from West Africa. Nairobi has yet to announce flight bans to and from the 4 affected West African states. Now, all of this as new figures from the WHO show the death toll now standing at 1,069. There were 128 new cases and 56 new deaths reported this past Sunday and Monday. Liberia was the worst hit with 32 new Ebola deaths. Meanwhile, Canada says it will donate up to 1,000 doses of its test medication following a WHO clearance to use experimental drugs in the fight against this deadly virus. As widely expected, the Bank of Korea lowered the nation's key interest rate by 25 basis points after keeping it steady for 14 months. The move goes hand in hand with the government's expansionary policy aimed at propping up the economy that has been sputtering since the April ferry disaster. Our economics correspondent Hwang Ji-hye reports.
The Bank of Korea has joined a government-led campaign to spur growth in the wobbly economy. It lowered its key interest rate by 1/4 of a percentage point to 2.25% following its monthly monetary policy meeting on Thursday. It's the first rate cut by the central bank since May last year. Governor Lee Ju-yeol said the cut is a preemptive measure to stop the economy from slowing further while inflationary pressure is low.
The rate cut, together with the government stimulus measures, is expected to improve consumer sentiment and contribute to maintaining growth momentum.
The central bank's move comes after the government unveiled a set of aggressive stimulus measures last month, including additional fiscal spending of roughly $11.5 billion. President Park Geun-hye has also called on economic policymakers to take all possible steps to stop the country from falling into Japan-style stagnation. But concerns linger that lowering the key rate could result in more household debt, which already stands at around $980 billion. While the governor admits that the rate cut would have a negative impact on the snowballing debt problem, he says the level is manageable, at least for now.
It's not the absolute amount of household debt that we have to focus on. It's whether the increased rate of household debt exceeds the increased rate of income.
This month's rate cut was widely expected as Lee recently mentioned that the bank agrees with the government that the Korean economy is facing challenges. While pundits have raised questions about the central bank's independence, the BOK chief was clear about its neutrality, saying the bank does not make decisions that stand opposed to their assessments of current economic conditions. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Now, yesterday we introduced you to an exhibition dedicated to Pope Francis, and today we have another special exhibition in line. To tell us all about it, our Im Hyun-hee joins me in the studio. Good afternoon, Hyun-hee.
Good afternoon. So this one is actually about the history of Catholicism here in Korea, most specifically about the East and West gates here in Seoul that were very important to the history of Catholicism. So take a look.
The history of Catholicism is only a few hundred years old in Korea, much shorter than some of the European counterparts. But this short history saw some very dark times for those following the Catholic faith. Years of violence and persecution of thousands of lives marks the religion. And even after all those years, two of the most important landmarks to the history of Catholicism in Korea are honored through this exhibition.
This exhibition is about the East and West small gates. The West Gate in particular is where many people were persecuted and history was passed down.
The Seoul Museum of History is a major contributor to the historical documentation of not just Seoul, but the entire country. Although the two gates are no longer in existence, their historical value is brought to life through the various exhibition pieces. It's a thorough look into the diverse history, a valuable resource for learning about the two gates where thousands and thousands of lives were martyred. The East Small Gate, or Dongseomun, was located near what is now Haewadong, and it's where everything started. It was considered a gateway into Asia by many of the early monks. But the West Small Gate was where most of the persecutions took place. 21 of the 124 individuals to be beatified by Pope Francis this time around lost their lives at the West Small Gate. And 44 of the past 103 canonized died there as well, all lives recognized through this mesmerizing installation art. History can be tracked through journals, or even through paintings and art. What was once a somber sight in the past is now a memory that can live on in the millions who now follow the Catholic religion today.
Were you able to find out how they were able to get those documents recovered?
Right. So during the Japanese occupation, tons of documents on Korea and Korean history were lost. But fortunately, Archbishop Gustav Mutter was actually sent to Korea to keep track, and he did actually keep a diary for 43 straight years up until his death. And so his resources were very valuable, and they really did contribute to this exhibition and to us knowing about what really happened back then.
So the two gates are, of course, very historically important spots for the Catholicism over the history of the Catholicism in Korea. So is the Pope, does the Pope have any plans to visit those two sites during his visit?
He does plan on actually visiting Seoul, the West Gate, where many were persecuted. And so although it's not there, there is a martyr shrine there, and he will be there Saturday before the beatification ceremony. And so like I mentioned in the report, 21 of the 124 to be beatified did die at that shrine, at that site. And so it's a very emotional cause, very emotional scene for everybody.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Uni, for your report today.
Always a pleasure.
Good afternoon. It's drizzling right now here in Seoul, and regions in the south have been receiving on and off heavy showers since yesterday, and it's forecast to continue until tomorrow morning, while areas up north will see a mix of clouds and drizzle throughout the day. So with the clouds and rain, it will be 2 to 3 degrees cooler than yesterday, as the high in Seoul will rise to 27, while Daegu and Busan will see highs of 24, and Gwangju will get up to 25 this afternoon. And for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 26 and 24, and Dokdo should see high of 23 later in the day. Well, a 3-day holiday weekend starts tomorrow, so again, rain is forecast through tomorrow for people down south, but for here in Seoul, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds throughout the day, and Saturday as well with a chance of passing showers. But on Sunday, it seems like we're going to have a nationwide showers starting Sunday afternoon. Well, that's all for me today, and back to you, Hyun-kyung, in the studio.
All right, thank you, Ji-hyun. That's all we have for you now. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more at 4 p.m. Korea time.